Shalom, more praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahshua. Double honor to the Apostle JMS. This is Anna Allah coming to the video. In this video, continuing the lesson going into the Apostle Paul's citizenship. Now, this part is going to have to be like two parts because there's a lot of information here. So, I believe this is part 6, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe 7. I think it's part 6. But let's get right to it. This is the book of Acts, chapter 22, verse. I'm going to start from verse 20. Acts 22 and 20. This is around where we left off at. And when the blood of thy martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by and consenting unto his death, and kept the raiment of them that slew him. And he said unto me, Depart, for I will send thee far hence unto the Gentiles. And they gave him audience unto this word, and then lifted up their voices and said, Away with such a fellow from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. Get this guy out of here. He should die. This is what they're saying. You know, because of all this accusation that was being made about the Apostle Paul. And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust into the air, it don't mean they literally just was stripped butt naked. When it says they cast off their clothes and threw dust into the air. In other words, they were irritated, they were angry. So they threw dust into the air. They may have torn their garments or shook their garments out of irritation and rage and anger. And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust into the air, the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle. So when you read the last last video, it said that he was on the stairs of the castle. Let me get that real quick. It mentioned he was on the stairs of the castle. Get it real quick. Bear with me. Right here. See Acts 21 and 35? It says, And when he came upon the stairs, so it was that he was born of the soldiers for the violence of the people. And as Paul was to be led into the castle, this one he's being led into the castle, but he was on the stairs at this point. And then he said to the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek? Okay. Which Paul was able to speak Greek. But let's go back. We're in Acts 22 and 24. And says the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle, and bade that he should be examined by scourging, that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. Examined by scourging. Look at the word examine.
Strong's G 426 anetazo.
Anetazo. To investigate, to examine judicially. So to investigate. So they would investigate him by scourging. What does it mean to scourge someone? To whip them. So when it says to investigate him by scourging, in other words, they sought to extort an interrogation by from the Apostle Paul by whipping him. It's got the word scourging. Mastics.
Strong's G 3148 mastiques.
A whip, scourge, metaphorically a scourge, plague, a calamity, misfortune, especially sent by the Most High to discipline or punish. So we know that's talking about a whip. Okay? So when it says they was going to examine him by scourging, meaning they were seeking to extort a confession from the Apostle Paul by whipping him. How we know that? Because later on in verse it says examine, which means to interrogate. How do you interrogate somebody with a whip? You whip them and you interrogate someone because you want an answer. You want information. You want a confession. So if you examine that person by scourging, if you're seeking a confession by scourging, then you're seeking to extort a confession from a person by whipping them. In other words, torturing them. And then it goes on and says that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. In other words, that the chief captain may know why the people cried against the Apostle Paul. Meaning, why were they speaking these things? Because the Apostle Paul stood up and said things, but the people were still saying that this man should die. They still had all of those accusations against him. So the chief captain didn't know who to believe. So they know what? We're going to examine this guy by scourging. We're going to interrogate him by whipping him and to try to extort a confession from him so that we would know what's the real reason why the people are saying these things about him. And it says, and as they bound him with thongs, in other words, bound him with leather straps, They tied them up. Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, "Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?" What's that talking about? Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? Because Roman citizens had rights, contrary to popular belief. Roman citizens had rights. And one of the rights of a Roman citizen, you couldn't scourge a man that was uncondemned. You couldn't scourge a Roman citizen. Whip him. Let's get some information on that. Now this says en or n-academic.com, academic dictionaries and encyclopedias. And this phrase from Wikipedia says Valerian and Porcian laws. The Valerian and Porcian laws were passed between Rome's founding in 509 BC and 195 BC. They exempted Roman citizens from degrading and shameful forms of punishment, such as scourging with rods or whips, and especially crucifixion. They also established certain rights for Roman citizens, such as the right of appeal to the plebeian tribunes called provocatio. The original Valerian law had also made it legal to kill any citizen who was plotting to seize a tyranny. Alright? So we got an actual law right here. The Valerian and Porcian laws that were passed between Rome's founding in 509 BC and 195 BC. They exempted Roman citizens from degrading and shameful forms of punishment, such as scourging with rods or whips, and especially crucifixion. So it was illegal for you to scourge a Roman. You couldn't do that. Why? Because of these Valerian and Porcian laws that was established, that were passed between Rome's founding in 509 to 195 BC. And if you scroll down, it says another law that passed with the intention of protecting citizens from severe punishment at the hands of governors and magistrates is the Lex Julia de V Publica, passed around 50 BC. So that's it right there. So the Apostle Paul knew that law. He knew that a Roman citizen could not be scourged because of the Valerian and Porcian laws passed between 509 and 195 BC. So a Roman citizen had a right where they shouldn't have had to, where they couldn't go through these degrading and shameful forms of punishment. Now this right here says the ultimate goal, citizenship. It says civis Romanissum, I am a Roman citizen. That's what that means. Was one of the most influential phrases in the Roman Empire. Coined by Cicero, this phrase demonstrated the influence citizenship to the Roman Empire had on the people of the classical world. Different methods of attaining Roman citizenship existed and were employed by the diverse people of Rome and neighboring regions. The people of the Roman Empire were strictly classified based on a hierarchical social class structure, with full Roman citizenship as the desired state. These citizens held specific graduated rights and responsibilities based on the level of citizenship, with increasing power and prestige at higher levels of citizenship. Roman citizenship meant being a member of the most powerful empire in the classical age and was avidly sought by the people of the time. Roman citizenship was coveted, and there were a variety of paths towards attaining this goal. The first and most common was to be born to a Roman father who was a citizen, joining connubium, official Roman marriage, with the mother. This child automatically gained the social class of his or her father and attained full Roman citizenship. If the child, however, was born outside of connubium, the social standing of the mother was granted. The mother was typically a peregrinus, a foreigner, or a slave, and the child most likely was not granted citizenship. This was a common occurrence for the children of Roman legionnaires, as it was legal to wed in connubium during the 20-year military service. Illegitimate children of Roman legionnaires were rarely granted citizenship. Alternatively, some people were able to gain citizenship as a reward for service to the state, given by the people during the Republic and later by generals and the emperors during the Empire. Latini, people who originally lived in the Latin states, who moved to Rome, were granted partial citizenship with restricted rights. Foreigners living in lands conquered by the Romans could also be granted citizenship. Listen to that part. Foreigners living in lands conquered by the Romans could also be granted citizenship. However, this was typically only for upper-class officials as a method of maintaining peace in foreign lands. Less common methods. We're going to stop right there. So it said what? It said Foreigners living in lands conquered by the Romans could also be granted citizenship. However, this was typically only for upper-class officials as a method of maintaining peace in foreign lands. Let's go back to the scripture. Acts 22 verse 25. And as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, Is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? So the Apostle Paul knew about the Valerian and Porcian laws passed from 509 BC and 195 BC that prevented Roman citizens to go through degrading and shameful punishment, such as being scourged. But then here it says, when the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, Take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. So, however, take heed what you do to this guy, man, because you know this guy's a Roman. He's an actual Roman citizen. That's why the Apostle Paul said that, a man that is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, Tell me, art thou a Roman? He said, Yeah, or yea. The Apostle Paul said, Yeah, I'm a Roman. And the chief captain answered with the great sum obtained out of his freedom. And Paul said, But I was freeborn. So the Apostle Paul said he was a freeborn citizen. But we know Apostle Paul wasn't actually born in Rome, Italy. We know the Apostle Paul was from where? He's from Tarsus. He said it himself. Let's go back up to the scripture. Acts 22 verse 3. I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia. So he was born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia. So how was the Apostle Paul a Roman citizen if he wasn't actually from Rome, Italy? Let's go back to what we just read. At the bottom of your screen, foreigners living in lands conquered by the Romans could also be granted citizenship. However, this was typically only for upper-class officials as a method of maintaining peace in foreign lands. So for one, foreigners living in lands conquered by the Romans. So the Apostle Paul was from Tarsus, a city in Cilicia. He wasn't born in Rome, Italy. He's from Tarsus, a city in Cilicia. That's a foreign land, and it was conquered by the Romans, and they were granted citizenship. And now, but that was typically for people of the upper class. So that means what? The Apostle Paul had to have been of the upper class. He had to have been up. After all, he was a Pharisee. He was a learned man, so he had to have been in the upper class. And him being from Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, was granted citizenship. Why? Because it was conquered by the Romans. Let's get some information on that. Here's a website called Drive Through History Adventures. It says City of Tarsus. Tarsus is in south central Turkey, about 12 miles from the Mediterranean Sea. The city has a long history of commerce and has been an important trading stop for thousands of years. Today, Tarsus is a thriving agricultural district with a solid industrial center dedicated to food processing, farm equipment, and textiles. The current population of Tarsus and its surrounding farming region is over 300,000. There isn't much from the time of Saul that has been excavated in Tarsus yet. The modern city was built right on top of the ancient ruins. However, there are a few sites to visit that connect to the Roman period, including a major paved street and the colonnaded podium from the Roman 1st and 2nd centuries. Other excavations have turned up baths, porticos, a Roman theater, and the Roman temple. During the Roman Republic in 67 BC, the military leader Pompey the Great made Tarsus the capital of the Roman province of Cilicia. It was at this time that any Jews of the diaspora living in Tarsus could have received Roman citizenship. Tarsus also supported Julius Caesar and was briefly named Heliopolis for his visit in 47 BC. In 42 BC, Mark Antony, the Roman general who then controlled the eastern provinces, declared the city free. That means the citizens of Tarsus weren't subject to Roman taxation and received other special privileges. In 41 BC, when Mark Antony was in a struggle for power with another Roman leader named Octavian, Antony established a military alliance with Cleopatra of Egypt and Tarsus. So it's once again telling you more information why he was from no mean city. It's a very important city. But keep in mind, it said what? During the Roman Republic in 67 BC, the military leader Pompey made Tarsus the capital of the Roman province of Cilicia. And it was at that time Jews could have received Roman citizenship. And then it tells you in 42 BC, which is 25 years later, Mark Antony, the Roman general, who then controlled the eastern provinces, had declared the city free. That means the citizens of Tarsus weren't subject to Roman taxation and received other special privileges. If you watched the previous show called A Citizen of No Mean City, I went into some of that information through Spirit. This is from a website called International Standard Bible Encyclopedia Online. It's like a Bible encyclopedia. So let's go down here, section 5, where it says Tarsus in the Roman Empire. Okay? Tarsus in the Roman Empire. About 104 BC, part of Cilicia became a Hem province. And after the Mithridatic Wars, let's look at the Hem province. Okay, this says Hem. Doesn't give us much there. Let's go back. And after the Mithridatic Wars, during which Tarsus, well, I'm not even gonna go into that. That's not what the lesson is about. Stick to the point. During which Tarsus fell temporarily into the hands of Tigranes of Armenia, Pompey the Great reorganized the eastern portion of the Hem Empire. So this is the Hem province, talking about the Hem Empire, 64 to 63 BC. And Tarsus became the capital of a new and enlarged province, administered by Hem governors who usually held office for a single year. Thus we find Cicero in command of Cilicia from the summer of 51 BC to the summer of the following year, and though he expressly mentions Tarsus only rarely in his exit letters of this period, yet there is reason to believe that he resided there during part of his year of office. Julius Caesar passed through the city, talking about Tarsus, in 47 BC on his march from Egypt to Pontus, and was enthusiastically received. In his honor, the name Tarsus was changed to Heliopolis, but this proved no more lasting than Antioch on the Cydnus had been. In other words, the name Heliopolis didn't remain because eventually it got its name back, as I mentioned in another show, through the Spirit. Cassius temporarily overrode it and imposed on it a crushing fine, but after the overthrow of the Republican cause at Philippi and the assignment of the East to Antony's administration, Tarsus received the position of an independent and duty-free state, civitas libera et immunis, and became for some time Antony's place of residence. This privileged status was confirmed by Augustus after the victory of Actium and made him sole master of the Roman Empire, 31 BC. It did not by itself bestow Roman citizenship on the Tarquinians, so it didn't not by itself. Okay? So it says the privileged status was confirmed by Augustus after the victory of Actium. That by itself didn't bring Roman citizenship upon the Tarquinians. It was other things as well, such as the other things that was mentioned before, when Pompey had made it a province, had made Cilicia a province of the Roman Empire in 67 BC, and were marked with the other general Antony in 42 BC. So it says it did not by itself bestow Roman citizenship and with Mark Antony. It did not by itself bestow citizenship on the Tarquinians, but doubtless there were many natives of the city to whom Pompey, Caesar, Antony, and Augustus granted that honor for themselves, and as a consequence for their descendants. So people there that was granted citizenship, but it wasn't upon them and them alone. It was also upon their descendants. See? It's a little more information here, but let's continue. And I want to go here real quick. This is the show I went to last time. I mean, this page I went to, website I went to last time. This is Tarsus on Livius.com. When the Seleucians went down in a series of dynastic conflicts, Tarsus was the capital of the northern part of the empire, until the Roman general Pompey the Great added Cilicia to the Roman Empire, 66 BC. So some say 67 BC, some say 66 BC. The city got its old name again, although after the death of Julius Caesar it was briefly called Heliopolis. It played a role in the civil wars, and at some stage, all inhabitants were awarded the Roman citizenship. So eventually, at some point, all the inhabitants of the Romans was given Roman citizenship. But as you read in that last document, that PDF file, it said it was for the upper class. Okay, so initially, all inhabitants were given Roman citizenship, and now it's to keep peace with foreign lands. Because if you're a part of the Roman Empire, let's give them citizenship. That's their idea. Okay? To keep peace with them in the names that they conquered. To give them the privileges as if they were, to give them the privileges of people who are Roman citizens. And the chief captain answered with the great sum obtained by this freedom. And Paul said, but I was freeborn. But the apostle Paul said, I was freeborn. But it said that chief captain obtained this freedom with a great sum. What does it mean with a great sum? Kefalion.
Strong's G 2774. Kephalion. Kephalion.
A sum of money. That's what it's talking about, with a great sum of money. Now, this is from Wikipedia. It says social class in ancient Rome. Let's go right down to it. Slavery and freedmen. Slaves um, servi were not citizens and lacked even the legal standing accorded freeborn foreigners. Slaves were seen as property and they were bought and sold like any other good in Rome. For the most part, slaves descended from debtors and from prisoners of war, especially women and children captured during sieges and other military campaigns in Greece, Italy, Spain, and Carthage. In the later years of the Republic and into the Empire, more slaves came from newly conquered areas of Gaul, Britain, North Africa, and Asia Minor. Many slaves were created as the result of Rome's conquest of Greece, but Greek culture was considered Rome's conquest of Greece. Don't you think of Daniel the seventh chapter? All the different beasts, and each beast was conquered by the following one. Many slaves were created as a result of Rome's conquest of Greece, but Greek culture was considered in some respects superior to that of Rome. Hence Horace's famous remark, Graecia capta firm victoriam cipit. Captured Greece took her savage conqueror captive. The Roman playwright Terence is thought to have been brought to Rome as a slave. Thus, slavery was regarded as a circumstance of birth, misfortune, or war. It was defined in terms of legal status, or rather the lack thereof, and was neither limited to or defined by ethnicity or race, nor regarded as an inescapably permanent condition. Slavery was more prominent in Roman antiquity than anywhere else in the ancient world, save for Greece. Slaves who lacked skills or education performed agricultural or other forms of manual labor. More slaves were tasked with agricultural labor than any other form of work. Those who were violent or disobedient or who for whatever reason were considered a danger to society might be sentenced to labor in the mines, where they suffered under inhumane conditions. Slave owners were allowed to return their slaves for money back if they were found to be defective or if the seller had concealed anything that would affect the slave's productivity. Slaves that were found to be sick or defective would often be sold for very little, if anything. Masters would occasionally manumit sick or elderly slaves as a way to save money if they could not fetch enough money. What does that word manumit mean? Manumission, or enfranchisement is the act of freeing slaves by their owners. Let's go back. It says uh masters would occasionally manumit sick or elderly slaves as a way to save money if they could not fetch enough money from their sale because it was cheaper than feeding and housing a useless slave. Since slaves were legally property, they could be disposed of by by their owners at any time. Now here's the point. Let me jump down. Get to the point. Freedmen. Here's the point. I should have went straight to this. Freedmen, liberty, liberti. It says were free slaves who once free became full Roman citizens. However, they were not considered equal to other citizens because of their former status as slaves or their descent from former slaves. Thus, they joined the ranks of the lower class plebeians. Only after a few generations would the descendants of former slaves be able to rise through the ranks of classes, sometimes becoming equities, or senators. The status of liberty or liberti developed throughout the republic as their number increased through their military service. Military service. Remember, captain. We just read that in Acts, right? And through other endeavors such as craftsmanship and business ventures, freedmen accumulated vast fortunes in the later republic. Despite the fortunes of these many liberti throughout ancient Rome, the majority of freedmen were plebeians and worked as farmers or tradesmen. So it said through their military service and through other endeavors. And what was that person? A chief captain. Acts 22 verse 28. So there you go. Then he was in the military. So that I'm going to close and say, oh, praise the Yahweh Shemel Shah, double line to the Apostle GMS. All you brothers learn something. Until next time, Shalom.